Welcome to Catholic Life as we spotlight ordinary people with extraordinary faith. I am Dina Dow, your host. I am super excited to introduce to our viewers our new president and CEO of St. Vincent de Paul Society here in the Diocese of Baton Rouge, Sunnie Johnson-Lain. I wanted to make sure I got the hyphenated right. Sunnie, welcome to Catholic Life and welcome to Baton Rouge.
Thanks so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Me too. It's such a joy to meet you. We've had our previous CEO and president, Michael Caldo, on Catholic TV for a long time. Yes. And I'm so happy that you accepted the invitation and are able to be with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
On a regular basis. Yeah. So you started your tenure in June of this year.
Yes. I came to Baton Rouge, St. Vincent de Paul on June 2nd. So I'm just about 4 months in.
But you're not unfamiliar with this ministry. This has been a part of your life for a long time, right? Tell us where you grew up and your family and how you were initially called into St. Vincent de Paul.
Sure. So I grew up in Massachusetts. I was not raised Catholic. I converted to Catholicism when I was 17 years old. My best friend in high school was Catholic, and I started going to Mass with her and her family. And I felt like this was where I belonged. This was the faith that really belonged to me and I belonged to. Mm-hmm. And so I actually went through what I call kind of proto-RCIA. It was in the very early days of what was called RCIA. And because I was not an adult but not a child, I had one-on-one catechesis with a staff member there at the parish, and went on to become a religion major and enter into ministry for a career after my children were in school. I started working in a parish. And one of my responsibilities, I was responsible for all the social action ministries in the parish, and one of my responsibilities was St. Vincent de Paul.
Wow.
I had never heard of St. Vincent de Paul. I knew nothing about what they did, but I still remember my first meeting and just falling in love from day one with the ministry.
Wow.
And I always have found and continue to find it to be the most beautiful combination of faith, prayer, and action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is very true. Yeah, I can only imagine the first time you heard about it, you probably were like, wait, where have I been?
Yeah.
Because that was something that the Lord planted in you, especially your conversion of being a teenager, almost young adult, and having that invitation from someone just to simply go to Mass. So the Lord's been planting those seeds in you, for a while. So talk about the career journey. I mean, you started in parish ministry, serving, overseeing outreach ministries, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a different role with St. Vincent de Paul.
So I was supposed to be responsible for St. Vincent de Paul, but I ended up joining. And I became a leader in the conference, which is the term that St. Vincent de Paul uses for its chapters and parishes. Joined the board of St. Vincent de Paul, and this was in Ohio, where I raised my children, where my husband is from. And then when I left the board, I was asked to become the first director of conferences in Dayton.
Wow.
And so this was really in the early 2000s. So I've been with St. Vincent de Paul for nearly 20 years now as a staff member and as a Vincentian. And it was really a new space to professionalize leading conferences. I always say conferences are one of the best kept secrets of St. Vincent de Paul. They really are the arms and the feet of St. Vincent de Paul out in the community serving their neighbors. And so I kind of became one of the very first leaders of conferences in the United States, and did a lot of work building conferences with recruiting and fundraising. I had the great honor of writing the member handbook for the National St. Vincent de Paul Society, which is just one of my proudest moments.
Wow.
And after a few years in Dayton, St. Vincent de Paul, I was recruited to go to St. Vincent de Paul in Cincinnati, which is one of the largest councils in the country. And Cincinnati has really, really large centralized ministries as well as conferences. And they are also really well known for their thrift store ministry, which we'll talk a little bit more about when we come back around to St. Vincent de Paul, Baton Rouge. So I served there for a really long time, and did take a little bit of what I call a holy detour to Catholic Charities in the Diocese of Lansing, where I was CEO of Catholic Charities there, and I got the really beautiful honor of leading programs like adoption, foster care, things that St. Vincent de Paul doesn't usually work in, and it really helped me to learn some different parts of nonprofit and to serve the church in a different way. but I was just so honored when I was asked to come back home to St. Vincent de Paul in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
And so that's a kind of the long and winding road of how I ended up in Baton Rouge. And of course, I knew Michael through St. Vincent de Paul, and I was really grateful that mine was one of the names that was mentioned as a person who would be a possible leader. And when I came down to see the work here, the ministries here in Baton Rouge are so compelling, so beautiful. I just couldn't say no, and I'm so grateful to be here.
And that's interesting. That's beautiful. I think you have the best of both vineyards, I call it, with the intensity of St. Vincent de Paul, but also the gravity too and intensity of Catholic Charities. So even that, I always say that the Lord plants us where we need to grow. And so growing through the insights of Catholic Charities actually kind of rounds out your whole gift of charisms of outreach and service. And let's talk about the structure, because you talked about conferences, you talked about like the society. So the conferences are parish-based, is that right?
Yes, they are. Yep.
And so those are the ones that you have volunteers with a coordinator, usually a staff leads it. And what is their particular role in the conference?
Well, I always say that if you've seen one conference, you've seen one conference.
Yeah.
So every parish has a unique set of resources, a unique set of community needs, a unique set of people who want to serve. And actually, one of the most beautiful parts of St. Vincent de Paul is that Catholic social teaching of subsidiarity. Every conference is empowered to decide how they operate, how they serve, what needs they can meet based on the unique needs in their community, the unique resources they have, the unique charism they have, the unique gifts they have. So it is really hard to talk about what conferences look like. I would just say that every conference looks just like what it should look for the community they serve.
Right. It's very particular, very personalized. And that's interesting because that flows over through catechesis to evangelization.
Very much so.
Another outreach ministries of Pensum where the parish is blooming and blossoming. And then you have you said Cincinnati has a large footprint, right, for the actual, St. Vincent de Paul Society, which from the local level, then it spreads its wings through kind of a larger, wider community.
Yeah. So St. Vincent de Paul, I think if you drew a picture of what St. Vincent de Paul, it looks like, kind of a hub and spoke model where there's always a centralized kind of office or ministries. And then the conferences are the spokes of the wheel. But the circle is the beautiful national and international society. Yeah. So I always say we're singing the same song. We're just singing the best version of it for what our hearts are telling us wherever we are serving.
Yeah, because it's not just in the United States, right? It spreads across the world.
It is the largest Catholic lay organization in the world. So over 150 countries have the Society of St. Vincent de Paul.
Really? I don't think people actually realize that number too. Yeah. I can only imagine the number of people that are served in a day. Through the conferences and the societies.
There are over 1 million Vincentians across the world. So many millions every year.
Yeah. So specifically, it may seem obvious to you, but what's your specific role as president here locally and CEO? What does that look like for you?
Well, every day is different.
That's good.
Yeah. And I have been here, for just a few months. So I think, in some ways, there is an ebb and flow, obviously, as time goes on. I'm definitely still in a learning phase right now. And Michael was our leader for 34 years. I'm actually we've been here since 1865, but I'm only the second CEO.
Yeah.
So Michael did not serve for 130 years, but he did serve for over 30. So I am very much, learning what has been established and trying to discern what is the next chapter. But really, I think, kind of coming back to my earlier comments about St. Vincent de Paul is one of the very few spiritualities that is considered an active contemplative spirituality.
Yes.
So there is very much a balance of thought and action, prayer and service. And that is kind of what my day looks like. A lot of my time is spent in discerning, program design or strategy, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later. But also, it's very much everyone is working together. So if there is a donation that comes in and I need to bring boxes of diapers to the shelter, I'll be there doing that. Or if they need an extra hand on the dining room line, I'll be there. So, and that's what I love about St. Vincent de Paul. will force you in the best way possible to always remember why we're here and why we're serving. So there's very much a combination of meeting with donors or supporters, community members, meeting with our neighbors, supporting staff, and then, like I said, more long-term planning.
So you don't spend a whole lot of time in your office some days.
No.
That's the function of the ministry, though. And thinking about its namesake, right? Talk a little bit about St. Louis and why. Like, why is it named after him?
After St. Vincent de Paul?
Yeah, St. Vincent de Paul.
So St. Vincent de Paul is the patron saint of charitable organizations. So St. Vincent de Paul lived from 1580 to 1660. And he was, originally, he served a really wealthy family. And he was kind of on the path to fame and fortune, or at least the priestly version of fame and fortune. And he had a very beautiful conversion experience. So at that time, wealthy families would have a priest that served on their estate. And he was the priest for an estate. And at one point in his ministry there, someone from the estate came to him and said there was a servant working on the estate who was dying. And he had no one to hear his last confession before he passed on. And at that time, people would pay to have the sacraments, and this person didn't have the resources. So Vincent, just out of mercy, went and heard this man's confession, and he had this conversion experience. And hearing this man's confession and realizing that the poor needed not just material support, but also spiritual support. And so he went on to minister to people experiencing poverty. And Vincent has this amazing quote that I think about a lot. And one day he was preaching at the pulpit, and he was giving his homily, and after the homily he shared about a family in the parish that was sick. And everyone in the family was sick, and no one could make the meals or take care of the house. And so he said, I need you all to help this family. And later that afternoon he was walking through the village, and he saw all these women of the village carrying baskets back and forth to the house. And he started noticing they were all carrying the same things, and they were all going at the same time. And he realized that there was such a need to harness generosity. And he said this thing that I remember a lot, which is the poor suffer less from a lack of generosity than they do from a lack of organization.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many good and generous people that want to do good and generous things, but there needs to be a structure. And so from the very beginning of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, that has been a hallmark of our work. And I call it stewardship. It's harnessing the goodness, the generosity of people into a way that can be the most efficacious, impactful. And so that's why the society was named after him. When Frederick Ozanam and his friends founded it 200 years later, they looked to Vincent as this inspiration, not just of mercy and kindness and generosity and faith, but also of organization and impact. So.
Yeah, and very intentionality behind that, but rooted in the corporal works of mercy, Catholic social teachings too that we see today, and then the opportunity to be able to serve those, as we know, not to keep them in poverty, but to lift them up, right, and to raise them into new life. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about all the amazing opportunities that people can serve through St. Vincent de Paul, and then the services that are offered. Stay with us. We'll be right back in just a minute.
In a world filled with stress and uncertainty, find peace and comfort in the Divine Mercy Chaplain. This powerful prayer, given to Saint Faustina by Jesus himself, brings solace to the anxious soul and hope to the despairing heart.
Eternal Father, I offer you the body and the blood.
Join the faithful of St. George, St. Thomas More, and Most Blessed Sacrament churches as we come together to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplain.
For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world.
Experience the unity of prayer with your brothers and sisters in Christ as we plead for God's mercy upon our families, our communities, and our world. In these challenging times, let us turn to the one who is mercy itself.
Our Lord Jesus Christ, in atonement for our sins.
The Divine Mercy Chaplain, a prayer of hope, a balm for the soul, a plea for God's mercy. Join us each day at 2 p.m. on Catholic Life Television.
Welcome back to Catholic Life as we spotlight ordinary people with extraordinary faith. I am continuing our conversation with Sunnie Johnson-Lain. I gotta get used to your last name. President and CEO of St. Vincent de Paul Society here in the Diocese of Baton Rouge. So we're just talking about the incredible ministry of St. Vincent himself, boots on the ground, recognizing the need to kind of cultivate and bring in and channel that generosity in a more organized way, which you can see that, happening through the society still today. Let's talk about and turn towards the services that, you've inherited, a beautiful ministry as you've expressed yourself. So what services are being provided through the society?
Sure. So when I talk about St. Vincent de Paul of Baton Rouge, the easiest way to describe what we do is really in 4 terms. So what we say is we house, clothe, feed, and heal. So I'll kind of talk about each of those. First of all, our housing programs, which I think are probably the thing we're the most well known for. Yeah. We have 4 shelters for a variety of groups of folks, so either single men, single women, families. And we also have an emergency shelter if there is extreme heat or cold or a disaster of some kind of weather event. So those are our shelter programs. One thing people aren't as aware of in terms of housing is we also have a permanent supportive housing program. So that is a program, both a central building with units in it and then also apartments throughout the area that are for folks who have a permanent disability. So we help folks with case management in both of those programs, both shelter and permanent supportive housing. As you talked about, really getting them, addressing the barriers that have kind of brought them to this situation, making an action plan for them, and then giving them the resources they need to move forward with their life, whether it's toward a permanent supportive housing situation or toward regular, fair market rent. So that's kind of our house. When we talk about our clothing, we have 4 thrift stores in the Baton Rouge area. And our thrift stores do 3 really important things. They're more than a store, and that's kind of what we want people to remember. They're more than a store. They really are, the thrift stores are the engine that fuels what we're doing on campus. So they do 3 things. The first thing they do is the most obvious. They raise money for our mission, right? We sell items so that we can raise funds. 100% of the profits from our thrift stores go right back into our other programs. The second thing we do is we give no-cost items through our thrift stores, thousands and thousands of dollars every year to neighbors in need. So if there's someone who needs clothing or furniture, household items when they're getting housed, resettled, they've had some sort of an emergency, they can have them at no cost through our voucher program. And then the last thing our thrift stores do is they offer employment to folks who may have some barriers to employment. So it's a really great place for people to get started on their career path or even to rebuild their career path. So then we'll move into feeding. Feeding, a lot of folks know about our dining room on campus. So our dining room is feeding over 300,000 people every year, over 300 people every day, 365 days a year. And then last, heal. Is really important in 2 ways. First, we could talk about physical healing. We have our pharmacy, our community pharmacy, which gives no-cost medication and medical supplies to folks who don't have insurance or who have unaffordable insurance in terms of their co-pays. And then we also have our dental clinic where folks can have emergency dental services. But then there's another element to healing, right? When we talk about Vincent and our ministry, we talk about accompaniment, as Pope Francis so beautifully talked about, is being with our neighbors and helping them to heal not just their physical wounds, but their spiritual and their mental wounds. And that's really where our spiritual care comes in. And so I know that we were going to be talking about our chapel.
Yes. Yes.
And our chapel, we've just opened our St. Louise de Marillac chapel last month. And that is really going to be bringing to the forefront what we can do for our neighbors in terms of pastoral care. And really also pastoral care for the folks who serve on our campus, our volunteers and our staff, because the work is really hard and it's important to reground ourselves in terms of our why.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have to feed ourselves, you know, spiritually and physically, before we can serve other people too. I mean, that's just, of course, we can't give what we don't have ourselves. And it's intense. I mean, the people, all those aspects, our family is certainly well aware of, because as you're talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that you know, like it's very familiar for our circle of friends and our family and our community. But thinking about those that serve there as volunteers or those that are employed there, to take the holy pause to be able to, you know, research. It's not always easy work, but it is work made possible by our Lord Jesus and the power of the Holy Spirit that just moves us out of love to want to be able to support someone who one day that may be us on that side of it. And of course, you know, the golden rule, do unto others as you have them do unto you, but also to Matthew 25, we talk about, what did you do, you know, to the least of mine? You did it for me. So all of those beautiful foundations for us to answer that calling, especially the new chapel. And that's something that was really important as the planning and the further expansion of the ministry appears.
Yes.
What's coming up? You know, we're about to settle into fall.
Yes.
Fall in Louisiana. And I don't know if it looks the same from in Dayton as it does in Louisiana. It maybe comes a little later. But what do you foresee coming up that those of us that are called to serve can support?
Lots of beautiful opportunities to serve in the fall and the winter. We have all of our holiday events coming up. And a couple of things are going to be different this year, and that's going to really be requiring some more volunteer opportunities. So I'm really excited about a couple of things that we're going to be working on. There's something that's already happening this fall that actually just started recently, and that is a little bit of a change in our dining room. And this will open up a lot more volunteer opportunities. Traditionally, when folks come to our dining room, they receive a hot lunch, and then they also receive a pre-packed bag of hope. And we have really been listening to our neighbors and hearing that sometimes they'd like to choose what's in the bag. So we have transitioned that to a choice model, so our neighbors can choose what they'd like in their bag, and they can pack their own bag to take what they'd like. So that's a wonderful opportunity to literally encounter our neighbors, to help them choose their food to go in a to-go bag. But then coming up, we have our Thanksgiving meal distribution, which is a beautiful volunteer opportunity, both in terms of preparation for the meal and the meal itself. So I would invite anyone who wants to be engaged with volunteering around Thanksgiving, please think of St. Vincent de Paul. And then as Christmas approaches, we have a new program called the Santa Shop this year. So traditionally, we have had a one-day Christmas gift distribution. And we are so blessed that we actually think that we can serve more children than we have been, and we can also offer parents the dignity of choosing gifts for their children. So this will be over a 2-week period in December. We will invite neighbors to come and select gifts for their families. So that would be an incredible volunteer opportunity to help neighbors shop.
Shopping.
Exactly. And then we'll also have an area for the children to do crafts and have a candy cane and cocoa. So that would be a really fun and fulfilling volunteer opportunity. So obviously, you know, I always think of, in terms of service opportunities with St. Vincent de Paul, we think of give, and then we think of serve, and then we think of pray. Those are the 3 things anyone can do for us. Obviously, donating either, cash donations or items, serving, volunteering, and then praying for our mission always.
Wow. And all of these opportunities and events are they're listed on your website
Yes, they
too,
are.
right?
Yes,
It's svdpbr.net.
Yes.
Yeah, I should have that memorized. I probably should, but I don't want to call it out wrong. I know that's really great too. And there's so many opportunities. What I love about it when my daughters were growing up is that we could volunteer together.
Yes.
And do you see a lot of that still happening and since you've been there since June?
Oh, yeah. It's a wonderful place. I think it's so important. You know, when I think about my children. My daughter was 3 years old when I started working for St. Vincent de Paul, and I had her organizing cans on the shelf. And now, I think it's really been part of her formation. And so we really, really value being able to offer opportunities for every age group. Just this morning, we had a group of third graders come in and pack lunch bags for our neighbors.
Oh,
so
it's great.
It's wonderful for any age group.
For school, trips to come and see the awareness of how outreach is just so important in our community too. I was also thinking how many meals that we prepared for the dining hall as ministry groups. Again, when my daughters were younger growing up, we had a mother's group and we would rotate, I think it was every 2 months. And all the moms we'd have one recipe. I think it landed in our cookbook. Bishop Bott chicken is what we called it, named after Bishop Bott, in the shelter of our previous beloved bishop here in the Diocese of Baton Rouge. And also, too, the opportunity I encourage people about the thrift stores, which they are wonderful places to buy from and also wonderful places to donate. My rule is if I buy something new, I take something out of the closet and I donate it. And, I always think that, I would still wear, but, I can't keep that much in your closet. But when you go there, the people that work there are just so beloved. They're like, what are you looking for? And then people that are shopping there, I'm not quite sure if they even know the goodness that's flowing out from the thrift stores.
Yeah, and that's really something we're really trying to uplift. And that's why, we are actually trying to emphasize when folks are buying things at our thrift stores, every customer, we're trying to say, thank you for supporting our shelter, or thank you for supporting our dining room, because that's what you're doing every time you shop at our stores. Yeah,
I know we've recently moved and we have, our collection of things that this is still good, but we have, no reason to keep it or there's no room. But knowing that's somebody else. The permanent housing thing, I don't think people really understood as supporting people in transition. That's something that I actually wasn't aware of. So it's good that you mentioned that too. So financial support, material support, prayerful, of course, your presence with people. All of this is our last minute and a half kind of approaches us. Where do you see the fruits of all this labor? What do you see? All the goodness that comes out of this?
Oh, well, I see the goodness when I see, a child not worried, not thinking about, we have our Sweet Dreams Appeal coming up, and we captured this beautiful photo of a little girl blowing bubbles on our campus. And I thought, she does not worried about, what her, situation is. She just has this moment of freedom and trust, and we were able to give her that, and that is an incredible gift. And to be able to see Christ in the people we serve and show them a tiny little glimpse of God's love for each of us.
Yeah, and that message of hope too that comes, that this is not always permanent. It's just the time of season that people are in. And that for us to be able, it almost makes me cry, just to reach out to them and let them know they're not alone, and that there are brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ.
It's a privilege.
You are such a gift. Thank you so much for saying yes and moving down to Louisiana.
I'm grateful. I'm looking forward to serving and finding new ways to serve our neighbors and to serve Christ through them.
Yeah, and we'll have Sunnie on regularly. She's going to have a permanent spot here on Catholic Life so she can continue to give us updates and all the great things that are happening in society. It's good to see you. We'll see you next time.
Good to see you too.
Thank you for being with us on Catholic Life. Until next time, may God bless you and grant you his peace.